I want to bring in Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor, former Director General Flight Safety, who joins us on this broadcast. Air Marshal Kapoor, it's amazing what the Indian Air Force was able to achieve, but there's one aspect that I want to come to. Again, it's a statement that's coming from sources in the government. Indian Air Force bypassed and jammed Pakistan's Chinese-supplied air defense systems, completing the mission in just 23 minutes, demonstrating India's technological edge. This actually is stuff movies are made of. In 23 minutes, Pakistan was brought to its knees, Air Marshal Kapoor, and you have a huge smile on your face.
See, we all prepare for this. Each guy who dons a uniform looks that someday you'll get an opportunity to be a part of actual operations. So somebody who's worn uniform and you are from the family, you'll understand that the whole fact, I'll just take 30 seconds to say that Arun Khejpal, 1971,
Yes,
didn't go for JC course. He fought with Lieutenant Colonel Hanuj Singh and
absolutely.
went and fought and got Paramveer Chakra at the age of 21 years.
Posthumously.
So
Yes.
this passion, so the same passion is running high today in all our armed forces today. You speak to anybody, it somehow sends the adrenaline when the actual operations are on. See, exercises, tabletop exercises, everything is different. Now coming
No, but
specifically to
did
your
you know,
question.
sir, specifically, did you know that you have the capabilities to jam the entire Chinese air defense system or take out some of its system and then jam the rest, and then your BrahMos supersonic cruise missile goes in? Or there is nothing that they have, even if they can see it, there's nothing they can do.
My appreciation of the whole issue is that they could never ever think that our indigenous components would be able to give this kind of results. So this was a turning point after the first night when they started to send hundreds and hundreds of Turkish drones on 8th night, 9th night during the day, missiles. We didn't have to use our S-400s. We could just take them out from our DRDO CAUS, hard kill, soft kill, lasers, and our own indigenous development. The main thing which has stood out in this is our integration. Integration of
Yes.
the army weapons, integration of the old weapons, modified, amended, and integrated with our system. Some are Russian, some are primitive. And hats off to all the engineers and technicians, I'm sure, who would have worked day in, day out to maintain. It's like maintaining a Maruti or an Ambassador car, and you still expect it to go 500 kilometers without any problem. So the kind
And
of
yet they did.
yes,
Yet
they
they
did.
did. Sandeep, Air Marshal, stay with me. Just 23 minutes on the 10th of May. Just 23 minutes. I want to understand what happened between 9th of May and 10th of May that India mounted such a massive strike. Because usually in anybody's mindset would be, okay, he hits one base, you'll hit two. He's targeted you in 3 places, you'll target him in 4. But to target him across 13 bases, 3 radar stations, and have your missiles poised to hit him in 10 more.
Well, Gaurav, all I can say is that it is possibly something to do with the fact that Pakistan launched ballistic missiles at us. It's a highly irresponsible act, what they did, deeply provocative. They fired a Fatah 2 missile, which was intercepted, fortunately, by the Indian Air Force near the Sirsa Air Base. And we believe that there were several other ballistic missiles that were fired at Indian military installations. Now, one nuclear-armed country firing a ballistic missile at another nuclear-armed country, it's never happened again in the history of conflict. These are very, very dangerous and escalatory moves, Gaurav. And the reason that one country doesn't launch, one nuclear state doesn't launch at another nuclear-armed state is that because you don't know what is in the warhead of that missile that's coming at you. It could possibly be a nuclear weapon as well. And this is possibly what Pakistan was trying to indicate, playing on the minds of our strategic planners by firing those ballistic missiles. And the response came very quickly, Gaurav. As I was saying earlier, that our OODA loop in this case seems to have shortened from days to a matter of minutes. And that is when this third phase of this operation was launched, the 23-minute rampage that the Indian Air Force went in from POK right down to Sindh and Sukur and all of those places that were hit. They pulled out their targeting, books and, let go at all of these places. And, the important thing again, Gaurav, is as the Air Marshal was talking about indigenous systems, the air-launched BrahMos system is a completely indigenous solution. The Russians do not have an air-launched BrahMos missile because they have bombers, they have strategic bombers to do all of that. But the Indian Air Force realized they needed this capability. They worked with the planners at BrahMos. They designed this, they strengthened the undercarriage and the airframe of the Sukhoi 30s to equip it to fire a BrahMos. A Sukhoi can carry one BrahMos, an air-launched BrahMos, and we're told that the future variants of the BrahMos NG, there would be 5 of them carried on that because they're smaller, compacter, deadlier versions of the BrahMos. So, as the Air Marshal was saying, that when you have your own systems, when you build your own systems, when you're truly Atmanirbhar, you can modify them, you can create Mark IIs and Mark IIIs and Mark IVs. It's called spiral development.
Absolutely.
Every developed country in the world does that. You start with a Maruti car and you end up with a Mercedes over 2 or 3 decades.
Those who are trying to run down India's air operations, Air Marshal Kapoor, I mean, they either know nothing about air operations or they hate India. Because the fact is, this was a mission that even the adversary could not think that a mission like this could be undertaken. Near simultaneous airstrikes on multiple air bases, precision strikes, supersonic cruise missiles, simultaneously lighting up his country, so to say, and more on standby to light him up even more if he dared to respond. And is that the reason that he chose a ceasefire instead of trying to dare Naya Bharat?
See, like we've been discussing, 2, 3 things have happened which are absolutely unique in this operation. First, use of absolute indigenous components, and in certain equipments, the coding, the guidance systems, the total manufacturing is indigenous. So first, they were taken by shock. That second issue, if you see, none of the Western countries or Western media is appreciated India's effort because their own equipment is with Pakistanis. So, like in Balakot, Abhinandan aircraft had taken out an F-16. Everybody saw 2 parachutes. Everybody saw one F-16 crashing. But they will never accept that a F-16 was shot down by a old 60s MiG-21. So, the AMRAAM component was shown after Balakot that this was not supposed to be used against us. But there is no talk about that. So there is double standards, and the biggest market which they have, they don't want it to go. So they can never tell the world that the Russian and integrated or Indian weapons have taken their Western equipment out. That is first point. If you recall, yesterday or today, the Chinese stock exchange, the companies which are manufacturing J-10s and PL-15s, the stocks have crashed by 9%. So the world is realizing that, these components, if you have to go, and just take it from me, it's a matter of time. The Southeast Asian countries, the African countries, all they are going to beeline to India to take and buy our made defense equipment.
This is India's shock and awe campaign, Sandeep. This truly is India's shock and awe. It's not just the Pakistanis who are shocked. The Chinese are shocked. Turkey is shocked. The West is shocked. They will not admit it, but they've been taken down. They've been taken down by an Atmanirbhar Bharat. And when Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Shivani, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi insisted on insisted on Atmanirbhar Bharat, Sandeep, everyone was saying, they can't do it. They'll probably reinvent the wheel. DRDO can't do it. HAL can't do it. India can't do it. India's done it, and India's done it in style. And I'm glad India's talking about it. And India's talking about it on India Today.
Absolutely, Gaurav. What you're seeing here is the convergence of two very important things. One is the political leadership that understands the application of coercive air power. Now, Prime Minister Modi authorized the Balakot airstrikes in 2019. And in 2020, you remember, Gaurav, when the Chinese mobilized against us in Ladakh. The first force to land up over there was the Indian Air Force.
Yes.
India was not going to make the mistake that it did in 1962 of not deploying the Indian Air Force. And I was there on the ground, Gaurav, and I can't tell you the kind of pride I felt when I saw the Mirages and the Su-30s landing in at Leh Air Base, and they literally created a wall of aircraft over there. So this is one thing, Gaurav. The fact that you understand the use of coercive air power, and the second is that you understand the fact that you cannot secure your country with borrowed weapons. You cannot buy your own security. You have to build your own security, and that is what really Atmanirbhar Bharat stands for. And that is a program that is 5 years old, and I'm sure, given the kind of performance of Indian indigenous systems, systems that were built, developed indigenously, we are only going to see more of this, Gaurav.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you're absolutely right about 2020. At the height of Galwan standoff, when I was reporting from Daulat Beg Oldie, and this is where army was giving access to no one to get to DBO. That's the highest point where we are at the Karakoram ranges. It's the highest advanced landing ground. That landing ground was being activated. That is how India, Air Marshal Kapoor understands the employment of air power and coercive air power. We study about Otto von Bismarck's gunboat diplomacy. They'll probably study about India's air power and coercive diplomacy to bring a terror state to heel. That will take time. I agree with you. I mean, it's not an exaggeration, but I mean, it may seem like that to some, but India's air power will be a game changer in the years ahead. Air Marshal Kapoor, won't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I covered, I think, so on your channel, in the coming decades, this operation of early wee hours of 10th May would be a chapter in air power books in the coming decades. That never ever in this time frame, has an operation of this magnitude being launched with such decisive results. It is absolutely phenomenal what our team did on that morning. And of your program I was covering, everything is fine. They lost some aircraft here, some ammunition dumps, some radar here and there, and drone storage area. But in my appreciation, the thing which impacted them the most was the strike over Noor Khan Chaklala Air Base.
Yes.
Now, this has rattled them to an extent, in my appreciation, that they, in their wildest dreams, would not have expected that we have reached close to GHQ, we have reached close to Kahauta nuclear reactor, we've reached close to Islamabad, we've reached with the Pakistan Air Force Academy is located in Chaklala, and their VVIP aircraft, their AWACS, their C-130s, their air-to-air refuelers, they're all parked there. And once we hit that thing, and informally I was reading somewhere that the bunkers, the underground basements, where the leadership of Pakistani military immediately went, because they didn't know where the next strike would come. So this would have made them, think 10 times before taking the next step. And I'm sure the decision would have been taken at their end when the DGMO called up our DGMO to stop hostilities. The next point
absolutely.
is the next point which I wish to convey through your that the handling of situation after the ceasefire was asked. Our leadership has termed it as cessation of hostilities. There's a difference in ceasefire and there's a difference in the word of cessation of hostilities. But the US leadership went ahead and tweeted. Now, in my appreciation, this was totally, undone, because a head of state of some other country should not be tweeting before these two countries themselves have come out openly. Neither was any statement made or this thing.
No,
So
because that's probably because he's feeling very left out. Donald Trump, when he came to power, he said, I'm a peacemaker. I'll have a deal between Russia and Ukraine. No deal between Russia and Ukraine. He said, I'll have a deal between Israel and Hamas, and Iran will back down. No deal between Israel and Hamas. So he thinks this is a low-hanging fruit. He probably didn't bank on Prime Minister Narendra Modi very clearly keeping India first and Indian interests supreme. And that is why he'll probably realize, Donald Trump will also realize, that when India fights a war with made-in-India weapons to send out a message to a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror, it is India that decides when there is a pause button, when there is a ceasefire, and when that terror state has to be sent another message. Because remember, there are other weapons in India's arsenal, including the Indus Waters Treaty, and then all our fighter jets, our Navy, our Army, they're still on standby. Air Marshal Kapoor for joining me here on India Today, and Sandeep Puneethan, many thanks.